I want to first of all thank Pastor Ball. When I first started coming here, it's been be 2 years. It's coming February. He knew, like I said, I've known them for many years, and he had asked me to give my testimony, and I said, well, just let me get more comfortable with the people. And before you know it, I'm working in the church, and I'm so grateful for this church and everyone in this church. It's just like a family to you. If you're new here, like I said, they'll make you welcome. We'll make you welcome here. But I appreciate the opportunity and the support of the Pastor Bond, Sister Patty, Brother Lonnie, Eddie, all the ministers, Brother Brad. It's something else when you got a 5-year-old son. You're not trying to sneak off church, going to church on Wednesday night, and I was running late, and I said, I'm going to go to church. He's standing at the door crying, saying, I want to go to church. That's a sign he's learning something over here in the port building, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the teachers for what they've done. It's good to see Tyson here this morning. I just want to give him credit. He never stopped, and I was there from 9 to 5 yesterday, and I just was amazed at the way he organized all that, and it's just unbelievable. But I'm going to give my testimony. First of all, I want to thank my family. They'll be here at 11 o'clock service, but I want to thank my family for raising me in church, giving me the support system I needed for the trial that I was going to have to face down the road. And back in 21 years ago, in 1992, I was healthy. I'd played high school basketball. I thought there wasn't a thing wrong with me. And I'm going to start out before I heard I had cancer. I was sitting at a ball game the Thursday before Brother Cecil Darrell Hooker got killed. I don't know, a lot of y'all remember Cecil Darrell Hooker. Great friend of mine, watched his kids grow up. And he was sitting there with me. I'd been through a difficult time prior to that. It was another situation in my personal life. And Cecil Darrell Hooker was up here at Sue Bennett watching my little brother play basketball. And we sat on the top row, me and him and little John, the one that passed away in the plane crash. We were sitting there. And Cecil Darrell Hooker was talking to me about the situation I've been through. And he said, Kevin, I want to tell you something. He said, don't look back. There's greener pastures ahead. And remember that, because a few months later, I was told the most devastating news of my life. But I kept on referring back to what Brother Hooker had told me. There'll be greener pastures ahead. But anyway, in July of 1992, I was come back from vacation from Florida, and I'd been hurt, and I hurt all through high school playing basketball in my back. And they diagnosed me with pulled muscles, and they just kept giving me treatment for that. And that July, the pain, we got back from vacation, and I was headed to the lake with a bunch of friends, and the pain got so unbearable, and I called Mom and Dad, and I said, y'all have got to meet me at the hospital down at Corbin. And went in there, and I was there for 4 or 5 hours running tests, and Dr. Park, great doctor, a good friend of my family's, he said, we're going to find out what's wrong with you somehow or another, and they kept doing tests. And it was about 8 o'clock at night, and maybe a little bit later, because it's about dark outside. And I was sitting in the hallway at Baptist Regional Medical Center at the time, and sitting there, and I was just sitting there in the dark. Mom and Dad was somewhere else in the hospital, and a technician come up, and a doctor, a nurse, and they got my x-ray back. And the coldest news, you always heard about cancer, but you didn't think it hit your family. And they looked at me and said, Kevin, you've got cancer, and you've got it bad. And Dr. Park came in, and he wouldn't even let me go home at night. And he said, we'll send you straight to Lexington. And that was just devastating news to me and my family. You know, we never thought it could have hit our family. And we couldn't understand it. Well, that night, they called the church in, family into the room, the hospital. They kept me in Corbin. And my Aunt Teresa, she passed away of the stroke. She come in. And I thank God, before all this happened, I was saved and baptized in 1987, and that just got me through this. And they started praying. There's about 20 people in my hospital room. I'll never forget it. And my Aunt Teresa, the Holy Spirit got on her, and she spoke in tongues. And it was prophesied by 2 ministers that I would be healed and made completely whole. And we had to stand on that for what was facing us. And every time when I was diagnosed with cancer, I kept saying, what was Brother Hooker talking about, greener pastures? I said, how could he be talking about that? But I never doubted. And then when I got that word that I would be made whole, I stood on that. We went to Lexington the next morning, met with a team of doctors. I mean, they was a team. They was 6 or 7 come in. They got my charts and re-x-rayed, done all the CAT scans. And they asked me, they said, Kevin, we're going to be honest with you. He said, you're young, you're strong, you're healthy as far as your body. But said, you've got a tough year ahead of you. He said, we believe we can take care of this. And I believe, first of all, that God does work through doctors. Ain't a doubt in my mind. And they told me I had a tough year ahead of me. And, I could face that, I believe. At the time, I said, we can get through this. And they'd done surgery that next morning. I had a tumor on one of my kidneys. And they come out of the surgery and said, we thought you were going to lose a kidney, but it just scraped off perfectly. And that was the beginning of what God was going to do for me, I felt like. And during that year, that summer, that was in July, I had 4 rounds of chemo before they could do any more surgery. And it was a chemo where I'd go in, and they'd keep me in the hospital for 5 straight days and run chemo constantly through my body. And it would wear me out. People have been through it, they'll know that. And I'm not the only one that's ever been through cancer. And I ain't doing this for any pity. I'm here today, and I'm so grateful. And we went through that chemo. Lost my hair. It didn't seem to faze me for some reason. I had a great support system. And we, after the chemo, I didn't know I'd be facing, but I faced 6 more surgeries that year. I was in the hospital for over 5 months of 1992 into 1993. And the surgeries I'd done for them, they'd done 4 of them at UK. I don't want to get dates, a lot of dates, but done 4 of them at UK. They went in, they'd got into my lymph nodes. They told me, the doctors said, if you had not come to us and they'd found us within the next month or 2, it'd have been in your internal organs, which would have been devastating. They said wouldn't have been no chance. But after the 4th surgery at UK, they went in and they removed all my lymph nodes. They said, we can do no more for you here at UK. So they sent me to IUPUI in Indianapolis, Indiana for my next 3 surgeries. They said difficult. They had to go and remove all my chest, lymph nodes, abdomen, around my heart and everything. They said they didn't want to risk it. They wanted me in the right hands. So we were sent to Indianapolis, and like I said, the year grew on, and I said, the faith, the prayers of the church. I mean, it wasn't just, I was going to Carmichael, great, wonderful church. I got a lot of great memories down there. And it wasn't just Carmichael, it was from the community. I was looking at a book of cards I've got. I've got cards from, I bet, 25 churches from here to Barberville, just out of state even, just for people contacted us. And we went to Indianapolis, and about dead in the wintertime, snowy, and just a tough time for our family. And we just kept determined, we're going to stand on that word that I would be made whole. Amen. And we had to stand on that word because we've been raised, and we knew when the Lord speaks that he means business. And we stood on that word. And I want to jump on, I had, like I said, 2 surgeries. And the next to life surgery I had, the doctors come in and that night, and they always check your tumor markers before they do surgery. And they'd always checked them, and mine had been normal, and they said they're sky high. Said, we can't touch you. Said, if we open you up, said the iron, said it'll spread like wildfire. And they looked at me and my family, and they said, we don't know if there's anything else we can do. But we knew a God that could do something. And my mom and dad, I had some family members down there, they got on the phone, and they called back everywhere they could think of and got a prayer chain started. One of the longest nights I guess we endured was that night. And we got through the night, and we still had to fall back on that word. And I always thought the greener pastures ahead, they're somewhere ahead for us. Well, the next morning the doctors come in, Dr. Kelso, I'll never forget him. He come in and he said, Kevin, we're going to do them tumor markers one more time this morning, if you don't mind. And I said, no. He done on, and 20 minutes later, he come back in, and they were the team behind him. I mean, they were 4 or 5 doctors, nurses come in, and he come in, and you just see an expression on his face, and he looked, and he said, we don't know what happened, but said, your tumor markers are normal. And so we're doing surgery. And my mom, I believe, spoke up, and she said, we know what happened. We said, they the higher power that took place, and he agreed. He said, oh, yes, I know, because yesterday evening, so we was devastated because you're a young man we could do nothing for. But the higher power of God, he just, like he overwhelmed that morning, said, that night, the throne room of God was touched by this community. And he said, we're going to do surgery. Went in, and that was one of my longest surgeries. I think it was 11 hours right at from the time I went in. And they, I don't remember much about the surgery, but when we got out, I remember seeing people there, and they were just thanking God it was my family because we was raised there. And I don't understand why God chose to heal me of cancer. He didn't have to heal me. I know one of the greatest men I ever known was Michael Lang's brother, John. And didn't heal him of cancer for some reason, but he's in a better place, and we know that. And I always refer back to him. He's one of the nicest men I guess I'd ever known in my life. I thought the world of him. But after that, we went back to IUPUI, and we done one more surgery. They cut my back. And Noah Blake, it's kind of, he sees my scars, and he'll say, what happened, Daddy? And I'll tell him, and he'll say, Jesus made you better, though. And I go, yep. I said, Jesus made me better. If I can be a light for him. You know, through this whole process, I was young. I felt like God was molding me, making me into a better Christian, showing me what he had in store for me. Because I was Sunday school superintendent at Carmichael for 13 years. We come up here and had no intentions of going to work. And, you know, Pastor Bow asked me to pray about it, and I did. And he placed us here working. And I think it's just where God molded me. Because I don't think if I hadn't went through what I went through with, I'd have been prepared to do the things I've done in ministry and stuff. And I appreciate that. After my last surgery, we come back home, and July 14th, 1992, I got the news I had cancer. We come back home, and I'd been on morphine. The surgery was so bad, the painful surgery because they cut all the muscles in my back. They'd had me on morphine drip for like 6 days down there, off and on, and pretty well on it. And they just sent me straight home, took me off that and sent me home. And I give this testimony to Celebration Recovery, Janet Baker's team, and this is where it kind of got through them, I believe. And they sent me home, and I'd got home, I hadn't been home half a day, and I started having withdrawals from all the morphine would been on it. You nurses understand that. And you talk about a bad feeling. And I had to go to the hospital in Corbin to be weaned off that for 4 days. And I said, you know, I learned not to judge, because these people that get on these drugs and stuff, man, it's a bad feeling. And they had to wean me off of that. And they just gradually just weaned me off of that. And I'd had withdrawal. I'd just draw up. I couldn't control my hands. And I said, my goodness, I said, if anybody knew what drugs could do to you, they'd never do it. Because, I mean, I'd just done it just from being in the hospital, never take drugs in my life. And I said, my goodness, it's just amazing. But I walked out of that hospital July the 4th, 1993. 1 year almost to the date that they was told that I would be healed of cancer. It's prophesied. We stood on that word. The doctors told me I had one tough year. We had some tough times during that year. We had some doubts, you know, when they said they couldn't do nothing for me. But through it all, we stood on what God had promised us. And we stood the test. And just to conclude my testimony, got back and kept thinking, you know, I've still got those greener pastures. I was young, and you know, there's a lady at church, and she's talking about, you know, dated around. She said, have you ever just prayed for God to send you the right wife? Well, my wife, when I was sick in the hospital, she came down with her friends and seen me. Never knew we'd be dating or be married. I remember her coming down to Plain Today, and we'd been to church for probably 4 or 5 years together before we'd ever dated. And after I kind of started praying and maybe God sent me the right person, he sent Susan in my life, and what a blessing that was. And just a blessing, because if I didn't go to church, she'd push me to go to church. She's that kind of person. And then me and her could not have no children. And little Noah Blake, July of 2008, we was getting ready to go to Daytona Beach to the NASCAR race on vacation. And we put him for adoption. And they called and said, can you be in Baton Rouge, Louisiana tomorrow? We said, we'll be there. And he was 6 weeks old. He needed a home. And we needed a child. We got down there, and we didn't know a lot about taking care of a child. The lawyer brought him to about 10:30 at night. Kyle brought him to Baton Rouge and said, we've got a little boy down here for you. And they give him to us. But we had to go to Walmart. We didn't have nothing. We didn't think we'd get him for a few weeks. We took off. We made do. And we laid eyes on him. And we had to stay in there 4 weeks before the mother would sign over the papers. She signed them over. And we prayed. We stood. God had promised us a child also. We didn't know how it would be. Little we know we'd come that direction. And when we got him, stayed in there 4 weeks, and the lawyer come in, he talked to me, and he said, I want to tell you where I got this child from. The mother, we met her after the papers were signed. It's a closed adoption. She has no idea where we're from, but she was lost everything in Hurricane Katrina. I felt sorry for her. And she was giving up her child because she loved him. And she wanted a better life for him. And whenever the attorney come in, and she'd given some kinfolk to keep, and they wasn't taking care of him, and she wanted to do a legal adoption. So the attorney had to take 4 federal marshals in to get him from some of her friends because they wouldn't give her back to their mom. He said, this is one of the best feel-good stories I've ever had. Said, I walked in to get your little boy, and said there was loaded shotguns on the table, beer cans, and said, I know the kind of home I took him out of. And his mom wanted him out of that environment, and I know what kind of people he's going to. And said, you talk about a feel-good story. And I thank God every day, that adoption truly is a gift from God. I mean, birth is a miracle, but adoption is a gift from God. And I praise God that, he ain't no different, if he was my own blood. And I thank God for him. But in conclusion, I just want to say, if you've got, I hope I've built up your faith a little bit. If you've got any situation, don't matter what it is, don't have to be cancer. I'm here to tell you that if you'll trust in God and have that faith of just of a mustard seed, that's all we have to have. He can touch you and move. And one of my favorite verses is Isaiah. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall run and not be weary, and walk and not faint. I stood on that verse. And my mom's favorite verse was Psalms 91. He that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide in the Lord. I don't know that verse completely, but I appreciate my background and what I was taught as a child. Don't think these kids don't learn in Sunday school. Brenda Miller was one of my first Sunday school teachers. I remember it as plain as day down Carmichael. And don't think they don't learn. And I thank God for my raising. I thank him for saving me and filling me with the Holy Spirit and being baptized. And like I said, I hope I've increased your faith somewhat this morning. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to our pastor, Brother Bile.
God bless you, my brother. Great job.